And welcome to our webinar, Shift Thinking of DevSecOps and Observability Practices. My name is Leon Adato. I'm one of the developer relations advocates here at New Relic. And joining me today are Kimberly Price, Senior Director of New Relic Security. Welcome.
Thank you.
And
excited to be here.
And it's great to have you. And Nick Bartman, Senior Principal Software Engineer. I think I said all those words in the right order, right?
Yes, I think we got those right.
Okay, great. Welcome to you both. Okay, so before we get started with the actual conversation, I want to point out to folks who are watching that this webinar is recorded, and a copy of the recording will be available after replay, for replay after the event today. And we have folks standing by to take your questions while Kim, Nick, and I are talking and engaged in conversation. So please don't be shy. Don't wait till the end. Ask your questions. Someone will jump right in there and answer them for you. And with that said, we're going to dive in. Now, Kim, you were really adamant that rather than talk about the common shift left term that we hear a lot, you wanted to make sure that we simply said shift thinking. And I wanted to understand why you were so specific about that. You know, why no left part?
Well, so my team's responsibility is securing New Relic's products and platforms for our customers. So I'm an operational security team. And what I've seen at every company I've talked to, and I talk to a lot of companies because I tend to attend a lot of conferences. I've been doing this for 20 years. So what I see is this concept of shift left is not being done well. There's a lot of problems, and people are not, like, conceptually it's great. In implementation, it's got a lot of problems. And so a few of those problems and a few of the ways people do them wrong, you have a whole bunch of tools that get thrown over the wall to developers that's not their workflow. They're not going and looking at different security tool dashboards. And all of this tool noise, some of the tools will have the same findings. That creates a ton of fatigue. And like I said, they're not looking at those tools. And sometimes they're waiting for the security team to cut them a ticket, or for some team to go build automation to automate the ticketing, which is the ideal solution, but that's somebody else's job to go build. And then as you improve your vulnerability identification capabilities through implementation of software component analysis, SaaS, DAS tools, you start increasing your findings, and now your technical debt is rising. And then you have these unrealistic expectations of engineers. They aren't experts at security. They're experts at front-end dev, back-end dev, SRE, whatever their skill set is. It's not security. And then, so they're not staffed for it. They're not staffed to maintain all the components, because now that they're using open source code to accelerate development, which is great, they're basically IT admins of their code repository, where whenever a library issues a new patch, you've got to go update your code to take that new patch. And open source code doesn't have Patch Tuesday once a month. They just release patches whenever they have a fix available, and surprise, now you have to go update your code base. And then the security teams, because we've shifted left, we've shifted accountability to developers, are sometimes not as robustly staffed to be able to consult with the dev teams on, well, how do we fix this? They end up spending a lot of time debating, do I have to fix it? Is there real risk? Versus actually adding value in the strategic, here's how we mitigate an entire class of vulnerabilities. And so I tend to avoid the shift left concept just because of all this negative baggage it takes with it. The expectations are just very misaligned, and I think we can do better.
Got it. So yeah, we want to shift it so that it's more appropriately placed, but we're not saying where. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Well, and I think it's a matter of, let's shift our thinking into how we can do this better.
There we go.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So with that out of the way, with the whole shifty stuff out of the way, I want to get to the problem that both developers and the security engineers are facing today, both in their work and also kind of with each other. So what is that? What's going on in terms of security and code and all of that? Nick, I'm going to let you kick that one off.
Sure. So, the first thing, Kimberly alluded to this, it's that the tools we're using in security are designed for security engineers. And they tend to be distinct standalone things coming from individual vendors who have, expertise in sort of their area of the market. And they're not where a dev is living. And so when we're asking development teams to come in and take ownership of security, we're piling on a list of additional tools for them to go run, things for them to go do that are outside of their normal workflow, that are outside of the things that help them bring value. The way that we rate our developers isn't based on, hey, did you keep up to date in these 6 tools? It's, did you move the needle on your feature and on your business?
Right, exactly. And of course, the tools that we're talking about, because they're designed by security engineers who probably are comfortable with code, but they're not, software developers necessarily. The tools that that they're creating are, of course, lovingly crafted, and the UX is perfect, and the workflows are absolutely pristine, right? Or
well, and that's the thing is the product engineers, the application engineers, they know their application best. And they're not security experts, but the security experts, like we don't know how you've built it, how you've architected it. Well, we can go look at the code and we can look at it, but that's the other problem is we need to collaborate more to get the right things done. Because like Nick says, all those security tools, a security team is typically looking for risk to the business. And what a developer wants to know is, what do I need to do today? What's the highest priority thing? And so I may want to know about a specific critical vulnerability, and the tool output may identify 25 CVEs. Mm-hmm. But what if 12 of those can be remediated with a single dev action? That's what the developer wants to know. They don't want 25 tickets for 25 bugs. They want to know if you fix this one thing. It's like the clickbait of security, solve all your security problems with this one thing.
With this one weird trick. Here we go.
Exactly. So how do we shift the tooling to be more of a developer workflow?
Right. And just to be clear, this isn't about expertise. Kim, you had an amazing NASCAR analogy while we were preparing for this webinar. And I need you to share that with the audience also. About that, it's not about those folks don't know what they're doing. It's they know differently, right?
Right. We're all specialists in different things. And so you wouldn't say that a heart surgeon is an idiot because they don't know how to change their oil. But a NASCAR driver probably knows how to change their oil, but there's no way they're going to even be able to take your blood pressure. And so it just comes down to, what are people specialists at? And then how can we work together without, making people be like, oh my gosh, how do you not know this thing? Well, of course they don't know this thing.
Right.
It's not their job to know this thing.
And it also speaks to something that's been bothering more and more lately, which is the whole concept of saying, security is everyone's job, which is just garbage, to use a polite term. And Nick, you hinted at this earlier. Security, we can want security to be everyone's job, but at the end of the year, when you're looking at a developer, what are they rated on to get their bonus? What is it on their goals? Is it you wrote some really secure code, good for you? Or is it you shipped this many features? And I'm guaranteeing you it's how many features you shipped, not how secure any of it was, or how you went back and, secured things or whatever it is. So we can give this platitude all we want to, but that's just not how we are incentivizing people to work. And that's also part of the problem, is this mixed messaging. So, some of it is the shift thinking. Kim, you were talking about rebranding security a little bit. What should we call it instead? Like, entropy or Fred or what?
Quality. Quality code is reliable. Quality code is secure. And at the end of the day, no developer is going to argue that, no, I don't write quality code. Like they all take pride in the quality of their code, they all think they write phenomenal code, and some of them do. At the same time, if we shift the conversation from security, because security is all about penalties, even in what you were just talking about in terms of engineers are gold on shipping features. And you know what gets in the way of that? all those security bugs, the security team is preventing you from getting your bonus because we keep unleashing security tickets into your sprints. And we didn't put the bugs there. We just found them and need to tell you about them. And so at the end of the day, if we make it less about the security team is showing up and creating friction and more, hey, we're here to help you meet your quality goals.
Yeah.
And quality code is secure. So how can we help get us there?
Right. That's an important aspect to think about and to emphasize, is that like any other bug that would be a real blocker, like an absolute blocker to shipping the product, if you view your security errors and issues in the same way, this is a blocker, just like, oh yeah, you can't write to the database. That's kind of a problem for a lot of projects. So if you view it that way, it's less about some meaningless or trivial kind of interruption to the whole flow.
Well, and
Yeah.
security teams need to change the mentality as well. So there are security teams that are enforcers, and I'm proposing that this shift thinking around quality is also around developer user experience. So less about enforcement and more about, hey, how do we create tools and workflows and processes that take the developer experience into account and help us work together to achieve that quality goal?
Like it.
Yeah,
go ahead. Sorry.
Oh yeah, and thinking about security less as a gate and more as like part of your core process of delivering something. It's common for developers to consult with subject matter experts about a particular technology that they're working with. You probably have a database expert somewhere in your organization. You have Kafka experts. You have people who have built up expertise in different parts of the system you build. But so often security is this like gatekeeper that you go through as the last step before you ship. But if you talk to any product security team, they're going to ask you, get me involved early. And like come to us at the beginning when you're designing at the same point that you might be deciding what database are you going to use for a particular project. Involve security and talk about, hey, this is what we're trying to accomplish. What should we be thinking about ahead of time? And part of this, for me, part of this shift thinking is around like our product security teams so often are so disconnected from our businesses, from our thing that we're actually delivering. If you're lucky, maybe your CISO, it reports up to your CTO, and then there's like direct peering between your security team and your development teams. But so often it's separated out under some form of risk management. That you're chaining up under your security function, chains up under your legal compliance and your organizational compliance around all the different controls you work within. And in that sort of world, you view security as just another compliance boundary to getting something shipped, or compliance barrier about what do I need to get out, what are my requirements to get out the door as my last checkbox kind of thing. Making security part of your engineering process and part of your core design process means bringing it closer to your developers, maybe not necessarily from a reporting standpoint, but certainly from an engagement standpoint and from a way of thinking about how do I interact with my security team and when do I interact with them.
Okay, and you're hitting on something that I think is the next question that someone listening to us talking might think of, which is, okay, great, you just defined a process. I can do processes, so we'll just fix it on our own and move on with our lives. Like, why is this something that New Relic feels like we have to get involved in? Why don't people just take that process that you just outlined and just do it? What's in the way of everyone fixing it themselves?
I think.
Oh, wait.
Yeah.
You know how to drive. You can be a NASCAR driver.
Obviously, right? I'm a good driver.
Right. Is good really important? Like, I've watched NASCAR. I'm not sure that's a fast, somewhat reckless, in fact, but okay. Yeah. So, I can ride a bicycle. Why can't I be a NASCAR driver?
there's a whole lot of nuance into NASCAR. It sometimes gets a bad rap as being, you know, the racing forum where you just go around in a circle. But it's in reality like anything complicated. When you, no matter how simple it looks from the outside, when you get into the details, actually there's a lot of work involved. And even something that sounds simple, like having a process that files JIRA tickets. I can't tell you how many companies, like if we were to count up all the different security engineering teams that exist in the world, who their only job is to stitch together multiple security tools and get tickets in front of developers, the total industry burden that we pay for simple, what should be simple automation is massive. And I think the other reason we're here in this space, New Relic, is that we have a privilege in that developers are here. They're in our tool. They're in our platform, and we have developer eyes and the opportunity to, you know, put, as Kimberly put it, security right alongside reliability, and you know, be part of that core development loop and core, you know, like daily process of I wake up and see how my services are doing in the morning.
Okay, so now we're getting to what New Relic is bringing to the table. You know, what is it? So it's harder than just a matter of, you know, just install this utility and you'll be great, or, you know, do this process, sprinkle some, you know, ITIL on it or whatever. Like, it's not that easy. So what is New Relic bringing to the table that makes it even simpler, that really removes the friction to this entire process? What are we doing for this?
Yeah, you know, our thought process is to get security tools in front of the developer as part of their day-to-day workflow. You know,
Okay.
our first entrance in this market is focusing around vulnerability management. We'll do a quick demo in a minute, I think, but you know, our vision is around, we have developers' eyes. I mean, it sounds weird to put it that way, but it's we have developers
In a jar on our tape. No.
We have that privilege I mentioned around developers come to us as part of their day-to-day workflow. And so we have this opportunity to bring all of these security tools into a place developers are already familiar with, in a context that they're familiar with it in. You know, we speak developer in terms of what your services are, and you're already, as a developer, comfortable with, this is how I go find the service that I own when I'm within New Relic, and when I'm you know, start my day wanting to go understand my state of the world. And so this idea that developers can be you know, at home using security tools, so to speak, like it's not, hey, I have to go out and accomplish this one thing. It's like, you know, throw an analogy out there, you know, if you can renew your driver's license from home instead of going into the DMV, you're going to do it at home. Why go somewhere else to accomplish a, you know, a routine task that you're going to have to do on a regular basis? And so the more that we can bring things to where developers are and where they're already operating, that the easier we're going to make it for developers to be secure and to understand their security posture.
Right. And
One
just
of the other really.
go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry,
No, you go.
I was just gonna say, one of the other really nice things about this is that we also have the opportunity to aggregate findings. So instead of getting multiple tools telling you about the same issue, you can get one finding that tells you, and this was detected by these 3 things. So it helps cut down on the noise and really helps the developer prioritize what they need to work on. So we're bringing it to them, and then we're helping clear up the noise.
Right. And putting my DevRel advocate hat on for a minute, one of the things that you'll hear New Relic say a lot in a lot of our new capabilities and features is the words "in context." You know, whether that is a, you know, change that occurred, you see it in context, whether it's a log message that is in context with your traces or whatever it is. The idea of getting information in the context of the other information is far more valuable than having to go look someplace else or whatever. And I think what we're doing is bringing that security experience and the security insights into the same context as the other developer experiences or the other experiences that matter to developers overall. And I will say that at this point, we have talked about it so much, I need to see it. And we actually have a demo screen up here. So I'm going to add that demo screen up. I'm going to ask Nick if you can just make it big so that it's not quite a eye exam for my 56-year-old eyes. And yeah, but I want to hear about this. I want to see what we're actually doing to make this happen, because at this point it sounds amazing, but the proof is seeing it.
Yeah. So this is our sort of main console for where I might start my day as a developer, looking at services that I own. And as part of my normal workflow, I will periodically be looking in to understand the performance, understand problems that are going on. And we have brought vulnerability management directly into this experience. I can see right away that my service, the order composer here, has some vulnerabilities. 2 critical vulnerabilities exist on this service. And right in context in New Relic, I moved to the vulnerability management section for this service. It's also available directly on the left navigation. You can pin it as a capability to get to a more global view that we'll look at in a minute. This is a fairly traditional view where I'm seeing these are the CVEs that my service is impacted by. But as Kimberly alluded to, really as a developer, I'm interested in, well, what do I have to go do to make this clean? And the better view for understanding that is to go look at what libraries I'm currently using. This is a list of all the open source libraries that this service is using, and a concept around like their severity profile, which is really talking about how many vulnerabilities are present from each of these libraries in the version that I'm using. So in this case, I'm using BRAC, and has 7 vulnerabilities, 1 critical, 2 high, and 4 that are medium or low. But I can fix all of them by upgrading to 3.0 to 6.1. I'll have 0 remaining after I go ahead and fix that.
So I'm going to interrupt you right here, because the fact is that that's huge. That's actually a big deal. As a developer, I'm so used to hearing from the security folks, oh, you have a CVE. Well, what do I do? Well, you upgrade it. To what? If I upgraded the latest version, I'm 4 versions back, and there have been features that are deprecated, and I'm not going to have to refactor everything. No, no, no. This is saying you don't necessarily have to upgrade to the latest and greatest. You can upgrade to that version, and that will take care of it. And maybe that is, instead of 4 versions ahead, it's only 2, and I have much less refactoring that has to happen. As a developer, that is enormously comforting and very helpful, that I know that I'm fixing the problem, but I'm also not introducing so much more toil in my workflow. So I had to put that in there. Yeah.
Well, and I think that is an example of where security and product teams or security and developers can be much more pragmatic about, look, the ideal solution is to get to the most current version that has all the security fixes, all the feature fixes, the most modern, up-to-date component you can. Realistically, especially for teams that have gotten really behind off of the master branch, and now they have architectural work that has to be done for an update, that's just not feasible. Whereas you're absolutely right, that intermediate point along the build branch can remediate the critical issue without requiring a major refactoring. But the other thing is, as developers are consistently getting feedback on, hey, this component has issues in it, over time, ideally, you don't end up 4 versions behind, where you're getting off track. And I've seen organizations where they get so far off the master branch, they end up forking and having to maintain a private branch. And that's also not great, because they're cherry picking security fixes. They're missing out on new technical advancements and features. So I think that this solves the security problem without creating new engineering problems for the dev team that they can then plan in their roadmap and not have it be a reactionary fire drill.
Right. Anyway, I'm sorry. I had to do that. Yeah, go ahead, Nick. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's a common occurrence for me as a developer to be considering a new library and to want to understand is a given version safe before I even install it, but also what is everyone else at my company using? And there's a handful of ways to go about this, but we have a pretty straightforward one that we've brought in here, which is that you can at any given point come into a global view for my entire state, or even perhaps filter to a specific account, and understand what versions of libraries are in use, and how do they actually look. So we see Rack here. I'm going to pick on Rack only because it's sort of to the top of my list. But this could be, if you're a Java shop, this could be Jackson or whatever one of your high use libraries are. But you'll quickly find that there's a lot of different versions that are out there. Our demo application happens to be relatively consistent, but in a real estate, you're going to be looking at this and see a number of different versions across your different applications that are there. And as a similar story, when you're trying to remediate a vulnerability as a security team, you might be coming in with one particular version in mind that is the newest version, but as a developer, I can as we've been discussing, I might have different considerations to involve there. And so when I'm looking to remediate a particular CVE across my entire state, oftentimes I might have different instructions for different teams based on where they are. And so our example here is we're relatively unified. We have one version, but if you were to come into an application or a CVE where it's spread across many versions, my estate is using many different versions. We have a couple different views here that allow you to see that spread and see kind of some of the intermediate versions that you can then have those discussions around. The other thing I wanted to point out that I kind of snuck in there by going past here is we have a number of different integrations that we can talk in terms of. We've talked a lot about sort of the spread of security tools and the reality that very few shops are going to have just one tool to rule them all, so to speak. One tool that is scanning all of your different asset types and languages and repos and hosting environments, and you're probably going to be needing to bridge together many different tools. And oftentimes that takes the form of automation to get bugs into Jira, but now you're stuck with this, well, I got a bug and it's got a link to a tool. Do I have access to that tool? Do I have all the right information in my bug that is actually going to help me remediate it? That's another place where we really feel like we can help as a aggregate location for engineers to work with their processes and their services. And so we have a number of different integrations that we've lit up in the beginning, just in terms of bringing data that you already have in your other security tools into New Relic and putting it right alongside the remainder of that security data that I had there, the things that New Relic is detecting ourselves, but also correlating it together so that as a developer, I have one issue that lands on my plate. It's this CVE, it's present in this service. It was detected by a few different tools, but ultimately I only have one thing to go remediate. And similarly, we're starting to talk about outbound integrations. Coming soon, we're going to have a really interesting view on Jira where it's not just firing bugs over the wall. Look for that as kind of a coming soon feature. But in general, we want to be able to send you notifications where you work. Or send you tickets where you work, whether that's Jira or some other work tracking system, Slack or Teams or email or webhooks, just be this kind of nexus for your security tools and bring them to where your developers are.
I love it. This is amazing. Okay.
But
Yeah, go
wait,
ahead.
there's more.
But wait, there's more. Okay.
Because in addition to helping developers identify what their priorities are for remediation, we talked a lot about how developers can use it. Well, what about those security teams? Well, in that next Heartbleed, Log4j, CVE du jour event, your dev teams have gone and deployed patches. Did all the deployments work? Did you get every possible exposed instance?
Right.
And this is where it turns into a great resource for your security response operations teams to be sure that you didn't have a deploy fail somewhere and you're still running the outdated vulnerable component even though you checked in that code.
Right, because something didn't
Absolutely.
build or the CI/CD pipeline didn't, like that image didn't update or whatever. Yeah. Sorry, Nick, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, so to Kimberly's point, the other unique thing we bring to the table here, aside from just being in this nexus, if you are coming to this from the security engineering side, New Relic exists at runtime. We are integrated into your services, and we know what's actually happening live in your production environment, in your staging environment, anywhere you have our APM agents deployed. And the interesting benefit that brings you over, say, code repository scanning is, like Kimberly said, did it actually deploy everywhere? And how is my rollout going? Because you can have a repo that scans clean, but not every environment has yet been deployed with the latest build from that. Or you might have one errant host or one errant pod still from the last build that has the wrong version, or somebody is PR deployed in a canary environment and actually you're still vulnerable to it. We haven't really talked about this impact assessment side, but that's another place where our customers are finding value and where we're continuing to bring some new features in place, which is when there is that heartbleed or log4j or whatever our next industry crushing CVE is that requires everyone to go spin up on, will probably be a December weekend because that's how these things roll. When you come in and have this record of a CVE, we have this idea of instant impact assessment. When you come into a given CVE page, you don't just understand what libraries that you're using are impacted by it. You also have this concept of what are all my impacted services. And as you are, working over the weekend with all your dev teams to patch that critical vulnerability, you can watch these things clean up. You don't have to ask anybody to go rescan a repo. You don't have to wait for results to come in. You can watch in your real time as services are deployed and as fixes go through.
That is also delightful on so many levels. As someone who's had to do this, it's amazing. Okay, so this gives everyone a really clear idea of what vulnerability management is, and again, what New Relic is bringing to the table. I think that that's a good place to stop. Although I want to go to what I call the lightning round. What is one thing that you want everyone who's watching to just walk away? If there's one thing they had to remember from this, what is it? And Kim, I'm going to give you the first crack at that.
I'm going to go with. Let's reframe security as a quality initiative and a collaboration between engineering and security teams, and not just think, well, we gave them the tools. It should be like, there's more to it than that. And I think that the intent of Shift Left is great, but the execution has been lacking. And so let's work together to make that better. Fantastic.
Nick, last word.
Number one would be get your security teams involved early. The bigger the problem is, the gnarlier the solution, the more likely you are to want to have a security architect in the room early, and not later. And then security teams be willing to be part of that conversation. And it's an expensive field, but it's worth funding security architects who can be those consultants within your organization and can sit down with the engineers as they're designing and bring security in first, or bring it in early in the discussion.
Wonderful. Well, Kim, Nick, thank you so much for taking time out of your incredibly busy days right now to join me for this webcast. And I also want to thank everyone who joined us to watch and ask questions and hopefully learn some things. For New Relic, I'm Liana Dotto.